Welcome to Guide to Movies Live. We were going to do a countdown, but it would not work as I just said that. So we're very happy to have you here. This is Guide to Movies Live, your weekly source for the biggest movie news and discussion with guests popping in along the way. Sean, how are you doing?
I am doing, well, I could say wonderful. This is this weird time before school starts for me, and summer school has ended, where I've developed a relatively, increasingly foundational relationship with my couch. And that's just where I am at this point. There's just absolutely nothing to do. Some people like go for jogs or start a craft, like some of the other teacher friends I know. I consume content and occasionally drive 2 to 3 hours to a brewery to get some rare beer. So
cheers to that. And hey, it's pandemic rules right now, so nothing matters. And I think I speak for everyone that probably listens to this when we say that we are definitely there for the teachers in the world that have to really figure out how to navigate everything moving forward with educating the kids, because it is not easy. It can't be easy. I won't even pretend to be able to understand what everything looks like moving forward. But, from the higher education standpoint, we're seeing the past week, UNC Chapel Hill went back, and Notre Dame was the other one that went back. And UNC, after a week of fraternity parties and all kinds of stuff, are like, nope, we're pulling the plug. We're going online. And Notre Dame today said, yeah, we're going to go online too for about 2 weeks, and then we'll see what happens. I'm like, yeah, who would have expected that?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you saying that. I mean, at this point, we me and my teacher friends are just riding it out. We're very stressed about the whole situation. We're going on to these voluntary Zoom meetings to to tell us this or to tell us that, and it's stressful because we don't know what's going to happen. We're ready for whatever does happen. We just kind of are hoping for clear answers, which is tough to give in a pandemic.
Yeah, and that's the problem, right? Everyone wants an answer and nobody has them because everything changes day by day. It's terrible. But hey, here's the thing that doesn't change day by day. I'm starting with the transitions really early. So, just yell at me if they get too crazy. But before we get into what we're watching, and we both have pretty lengthy lists this week but some bleed over, I think. I want to mention the Guide to Movies virtual film festival, which is taking place August 28th through the 30th. It is Friday through Sunday of next weekend, not this upcoming weekend, but the following weekend. You can go to guidetomovies.com/film festival to RSVP and register for it. You'll get emails straight to your inbox that detail what's happening, as well as how to watch everything that's happening. There are some incredible sessions, from watch-alongs, which are live on YouTube, to watch parties, which are live and chat-based on Scener, to educational sessions, anywhere from finding your voice as a critic to creating desirable content, as well as live-streamed podcasts, and we will be one of those on Sunday morning of the 30th. So there is a lot of fun stuff planned for that. The official charity that we're supporting, because this is a free event, so I'm asking that any monies that you may want to put towards something, put it towards Direct Relief, which is an organization that is making sure that PPE is getting to the people that need it, not only in the largest and most prosperous countries, but the countries that are also dealing with COVID-19 that potentially can't ensure that their doctors and their nurses and all the medical professionals have what they need to fight it. So that's all I'll say about that tonight, but please go to guidetomovies.com/film festival to learn more. It is turning out to be a fun event. We have over 75 people registered as of tonight, which is about 74 more than I thought would be registered. So I'm very happy for it. Honestly, Sean, you'll be there.
I will be there, and I'll be there for Sunday, but I'll also be there for as much as I can. I really do love this kind of event. I think one of the things that you really just miss out on, especially in this pandemic, is granted I go to a lot of movies alone, but I sometimes go with friends. And what do? You discuss the movie. You're sometimes watching friends. Think about or watching movie with friends on your couch. Think about like back in the day when you were with your college bros or college gals on the couch, watching. Imagine watching Extraction in college, and some people are doing that. But I think about myself. I'm like, God, I wish I watched this with a bunch of beers and
Right.
watching Extraction. We're going to be able to do that on Friday night, and that is something that I cannot wait to do. So this is something where it's just like, yes, we cannot watch movies together. It sucks, but this will bring people closer together. And that's what I'm the most excited for.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. So many good movies that are going to be included, and they're all available on streaming, with the exception of one. We have the Mortal Kombat viewing, which is the 25th anniversary of Mortal Kombat. Actually, today's the 25th anniversary of the first Mortal Kombat movie coming out, which I love. But when you go back and watch it, there are some treacherous pieces in that film that don't hold up, such as the set pieces in the back, like floating with the wind, and they're supposed to be stone walls. But whatever. But Extraction, Parasite, Palm Springs, Mortal Kombat, and some others that will be there. It'll be a good time. But speaking of theaters and watching things together, did I tell you that I bought my first film ticket for a theater post-pandemic? Well, I guess it's not post-pandemic, mid-pandemic.
I saw this. I saw you post this, and I was going to confront you because you did it. You bought the movie theater ticket. You did what the rest of us have not been able to do yet. What I'm still too worried to do. I'm waiting for that unhinged moment to really hit it. But at this point, I'm proud of you though. You got there. You're going to be safe. I know you're going to be safe because I know you. So I'm psyched for you.
Well, I also bought it on Atom Tickets, which has the ability to refund your ticket if you change your mind up until the film time. So we'll see how our numbers are next week. But
that's very good.
Right. I did buy a ticket to see the New Mutants on Thursday evening, the 26th at 6 p.m. So I'm very excited for that in IMAX nonetheless, because I thought, if I'm going to go big.
Oh, yeah. Well, no, if you're going to be doing this, if you're going to be, and I'm not saying you're risking anything, but if you're risking something.
No, I'm risking something.
Risk it in IMAX. Like, let's go.
Yeah. So someone just asked in the comments, are you going to wear a mask the whole time? I'm going to wear a mask. I have like painter suits downstairs that my brother gave us from his construction job. I might be wearing one of those. I picked the seat that's like, there's two seats and I'm on the far end of it. And then there's an aisle and whatever. But no, I totally will be wearing a mask. I'll be doing everything I need to do because that's what we all need to do right now. So, I don't know. I'm just excited to see New Mutants, but I still think that this movie is going to end up being like, number one, the best reviewed in a long time. And number two, like people are going to love it because it's the first movie back.
Like, how are you going to handle popcorn and things like that?
I don't get popcorn.
Oh boy. Well, so I've been thinking about me and like I always do. And really the big thing for me is recently the theater near me has given the option to rent the theater for $100 to $125. Is
that the one that shut down?
No, unfortunately. Like that one is still, I hope someone buys it. Like, please someone buy it. The economy's great. Buy the theater. But this one is like a couple of towns over. But it gives you the option to rent the theater for $100 to $125. And I'm thinking, if I have to see Unhinged, and I'll probably be seeing it alone, is it worth paying $100? And it might really work it.
See, you could have said any other movie, and I would have been on board. But Unhinged looks horrendous. I think Slash Film, I'm a big that's always one of the websites I hit every morning to get my movie news. And I think their headline was something along the lines of like, don't beep at Russell Crowe because he'll get pissed off or something. And
this is why I need to see this film though, because I often beep like at drivers, and she beeped for quite a while in the trailer. But I will beep and lean on that horn while we're turning, as we continue to turn, so maybe I need to see this as a as a just cause, as a good lesson for me.
Or intervention, but either way, hey, let's shift over to what we've been watching this week. Let's make that turn towards what we've been watching.
Oh, very nice.
So I have not been able to actually give you some of the films that I've been watching for a while because I have not watched a lot of films in a while, but I did watch quite a lot this week. So I'm going to start, and we're going to run through these a little faster than usual because some of the feedback was that we had, spent so much time debating them. And if we find a film that we really want to debate, let's do a side podcast or whatever. I think there's one in this list actually that we might want to. So first of all, I was on Movie Files rewatch of Birds of Prey the other night, the fantabulous emancipation of Harley Quinn. And I remember seeing this in theaters back in February before COVID was a thing and when we were allowed to go to theaters. And I'm a DC person, first and foremost. So, of course, I go into it with that bias. I didn't know what to expect here, but I did enjoy it. And especially on rewatch, it was actually a much better movie than I thought it was the first time. Mainly because it's just a lot of fun. It's very different, juxtaposed to the typical DC movies that we're used to with how dark and dreary and crazy they are. Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn is just fantastic. Have you seen this?
I absolutely love this movie. I think it was on my top 10 for halfway through the year. I don't know.
Not even.
I don't know if it'll reach it for the rest of the year, but honestly, I look at just, talking about Margot Robbie. She always seems to have this energetic light in all of her performances, but really in this one, she just seems to be having absolute fun and just embodying what this character is all about, making it her own. It's really just like the perfect casting. And I remember thinking before Suicide Squad, well, this can't work. And to tell you the absolute truth, I haven't seen Suicide Squad, so I don't know if it worked in that. But
you're not missing much.
Yeah, that's what everyone tells me. Even when I wanted to see Birds of Prey, I'm like, should I watch Suicide Squad? No. So pretty much Birds of Prey, just embodying that character, and I absolutely loved her in it. And I love the female action heroes, where we don't see Birds of Prey until the end, basically. But you see this fun action movie centered around badass woman that is just a refreshing taste. It is wonderful to watch.
It is. And, this is a really minor moment, but near the end when they're all battling, when you finally see the Birds of Prey together, there is a moment where one of the characters asks, or I don't know if she asks or Harley just offers it, but for a hair tie. And I'm like, this is just so grounded and perfect for the female superhero that we haven't gotten in however many years. The last one we got was Captain Marvel. And she was met with consternation, but we talked about this. I like Captain Marvel. We talked about it last week with Nia DaCosta signing on to direct the second. But Margot Robbie just really brings to life this chaotic, smart, fun character that we haven't had in DC in a long time. The closest we got was probably Shazam, which is fun and dorky and quirky, but it's a family film. It's not this, rated R film that we got with Birds of Prey.
Yeah, it truly. Yeah.
So listen, for the next one, I'm going to boot it over to you first. We're going to talk about Boys State. And you were the one that tipped me off to this and said, hey, we have a lot to talk about when it comes to this. So hit it, Sean.
So Boys State, I'm going to just quick premise. This is a documentary about about 1,100 boys that go to this camp in Texas. They actually go to them in every single state, and they all get together and they basically do a simulation of politics where they try to run for, or they run for governor. And instead of doing Democrat versus Republican in the simulation, they are Federalists versus Nationalists. And so pretty much what this documentary does is follow some of those boys. Here's what I realized that was unbelievable. They actually they casted which boys to follow for a while. So, they followed about 4 of those characters. Those 4 characters turn out to be essential key players in this entire documentary. They got the documentarians here got so freaking lucky, because not only did they get some of the best characters or the best characterizations of people here, but they also got one of the best stories that I've seen this year, and it's a real story. It feels like it's written. It feels like it should be fake. Just because it's so good. It's a damn good written story, and the documentarians actually handled it perfectly. I was blown away by this documentary. It's my favorite documentary this year. It's up there on the top for my favorite film. What it does is it just goes after politics. It doesn't go after issues. Now, issues are mentioned. Republican issues are mentioned. Democratic issues are mentioned. We're walking the minefield now. It does not go after the issues. They're mentioned, but all it goes after is the moves, the chess moves that are done in politics, the good ones and the bad ones. And how youth looks at politics and how youth can mimic what is going on above them. This movie said so much. I really loved it.
Yeah, I think you're totally right there. I mean, I started off, and I said this to you as soon as I started watching it, that I was a little nervous because I felt like it was just a lot of kids that were, indoctrinated into this idea of what politics were and what issues they should believe in or not believe in. And it was very Republican versus Democrat. But as the film went on, it very much was not that at all. And, if you're looking for hope in our political system, number one, there was the kid that I liked the most in the movie was the one that I disagree with the most. The Ben Feinstein, like that kid was a genius. But no, but it was very interesting. And there's one character, not to spoil it. And when I say character, I mean one kid. He runs for governor and he makes it to the runoff. But he's talking about like how he doesn't believe in what he's saying, but he's saying it because he knows that's how he needs to make his way into power. And it's, just the metaphors for how our government is working today and all that stuff was just phenomenal. And I really enjoyed it. I mean, I felt for the kids, all of them. There were some that I was like, shut up. Like, you're an idiot. Like, you're the kid that I would scream at in high school to be like, take it seriously.
Well,
but it's a movie.
Those kids were like kind of like there were a lot of those kids that were just like, the kids that didn't take it seriously. But, and you thought they were the majority. And then all of a sudden you just realize, oh, they're not a lot. And it was just one of the most satisfying things. We're like, oh, yeah, most of these kids are taking it seriously because we don't see a lot of adults taking it seriously sometimes.
Well, and this is going to be a little bit of a spoiler of what you're referencing, but there's, the party chairman for one of the parties, Federalist or Nationalist, I won't tell you which one, is people are trying to recall him and trying to impeach him. And when they take a vote on it, it's literally like 12 people out of like hundreds or whatever. And it was pretty funny because then, he says, maybe you should form an intramural basketball team or something like that.
That was brilliant. I mean, I would say Sean Fennessy put it perfectly where this is a documentary that was, that was basically a Frank Capra film where, you just see like this, like, Steven Garza is one of the kids and he is like painfully quiet at times and then just becomes just such a amazing, like just speech character. Oh God, I will talk about this for the rest of the night. So we got to move on.
It was a really good movie. So if you're interested in watching that, it is on Apple Plus or Apple TV Plus, which was a really good pickup for them, I think. And I will say that from what I originally expected from it, it totally blew me out of the water. It's not what I expected. You told me this when I texted you originally. You said, I'm not going to say anything until you finish it. I was like, all right, Sean, whatever. Don't talk to me. But I knew I was just gonna like overlap something. I was like, well, in this part and this part and this part. Then I was like, wait, no, I gotta let him finish. He'll get there. So the other one or another one that I watched was I'm gonna skip over the one for a second, but I watched American Pickle finally. In American Pickle with Seth Rogen. I like this movie. It was very different. It was Seth Rogen in similar to a 50-50 type role. I like when Seth Rogen is serious. Of course, like part of him was not serious because he played two roles in this. But it felt like a very long SNL skit to me, quite honestly. But it was good. I mean, like if when I rate this week and when I post the review for it, it's going to be a 3 out of 5 because it didn't blow me out of the water. It also did not I didn't hate it. I didn't not like it. It was a good movie. And it was exactly what I would expect from a streamer. But I can totally understand why this wouldn't go to theaters because it's not one of those that's going to have longevity and all that. It's just a very different movie that I think sometimes lost the focus on what it was trying to communicate when it comes to the importance of family and stuff like that. There were some gaps in there. But overall, I really liked it.
Yeah, it lacks something in story. I'm very grateful I watched it alone. I mean, I would have been happy to watch it with Sam as well. I'm just glad I didn't watch it in a theater because I think it would have been dead silent. And I'm glad I was able to do my guffaws on the couch. It was just a very introspective kind of movie. It was not a laugh out loud kind of movie.
Right.
I had my own fun with it.
There's a line in the movie where Herschel says, in America, as soon as you screw up, you can never rebound or whatever. Like that's the end of you. And Seth Rogen, his main character, is like, no, that's not true. And I was like, oh God. So the one I watched earlier today, was Project Power. And this was one. So anytime that there is a spin on a superhero story, I'm into it. I want to see what it is. This one seemed pretty interesting, but the trailer left a little bit more to be desired. But the basic premise is that you can take it's kind of like a metaphor for drug usage, right? You can take a pill that gives you superpowers for 5 minutes, and everyone has a different superpower when you take it. I did not like this movie, and I don't know why ultimately it failed for me, other than it seemed very busy and never quite got to propelling the story that they originally set out to tell. I love the premise. I did not like the execution of it. I did not like Jamie Foxx in it. I did not like Joseph Gordon-Levitt in it. And Joseph Gordon-Levitt, I like. Jamie Foxx, you and I were debating this before. I'm not quite sure how I feel about him, but just overall, I did not feel this movie.
This movie was severely lacking. I also saw it this weekend, and I think that it didn't care about its characters. And therefore, I did not care about its characters. And I think the actors did what they could. I think Jamie Foxx is kind of funny and charming. JGL, the same thing. I consider them, I described it in my review, I consider them adequate. And it was just one of those things where for the movie, they were fine, but even the movie was not that great. Dominique Fishback is someone that is going to do better in better films. When
she's given better things to work with.
Yes. Like I hope that, please, in any sort of crazy sci-fi movie, don't try to like explain it that they're animal powers and stuff, because they're not. Like, Jamie Foxx is able to explode rain. That's not the power of any animal. I think I just spoiled something, but also you're welcome. It was
Machine Gun Kelly bursts into flames. That's not an animal power.
Yeah, that's not. Oh, God, I didn't even think of that. I mean, there is. I will say this: there is some, and I mean some, cool stuff in this. I mean, I would say that there is a fight where you do not see the fight, and instead you see the portion of it that takes place in a frozen chamber. Now, this is very cool and it's very stylized. However, I have just met that character, and I do not care about them at all. And so 100%. It's like, oh, you're using all this cool stuff on a budget that was, probably, above $20. And it just like kind of gnaws at me that, throw a couple of dollars at a script and see what can happen. I don't know, but it was a cool movie. Dominique Fishback, please be in more stuff. And then after that, there's nothing that's able to be salvaged from this, unfortunately.
No, you're spot on. It's one thing to jump the gun with the story that you're trying to tell and rush into the different scenes that you have planned. So what I'm specifically referencing is that Netflix keeps posting this fight between Machine Gun Kelly and Jamie Foxx. When you actually see the fight in the film, it's really terribly filmed. It's not well choreographed, and it leaves a lot to be desired. So I think that, again, the ideas are there. There's a good story in it. It just, the execution, I don't know if it was a budget issue or what it was, but it just did not come together. It seems like it's trying to be like Bad Boys. I may have said this about something else. I'm having deja vu here. Bad Boys meets Limitless meets like other things. I don't know. It was just there's a lot going on. I think I posted on Instagram during it, I'm watching Project Power. I wish I wasn't watching Project Power. But tonight, the last one that I'll mention is I watched Words on a Bathroom Wall. It was a screening of a film that is coming out this Friday. It'll be in theaters. I believe Amazon has it. Don't quote me on that. But it is a film about a high schooler who suffers from schizophrenia, and it's just about his experience and trying to overcome that. It was a good movie. It's a young adult film, and I do believe that young adult films tackle some of the major pressing issues in society better than some of the mainstream films do. But I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. It has Molly Parker, who is an actress from House of Cards. You may remember her from. She was Jackie Sharp in House of Cards. I really like her. She pops up in a lot of random things, and I'm always like, oh yeah, House of Cards. But it was a solid movie. I really recommend it. I teared up a little bit. I will not lie. But it's it's something that needs to be told on film, because I think schizophrenia is something that is not often discussed in mainstream media. And anytime that you can discuss a mental illness in mainstream media, I think it's very important to have that representation.
Well, unfortunately, with schizophrenia, it's told in the form of a comedy, and that's all they want to do is the comedy thing. And so I think that I'm looking forward to seeing this and checking it out, and seeing something that could probably put it in a more realistic light.
Yeah, and this was not told in the form of a comedy, which
That's
I was very yeah, totally. And I'm very surprised by that, because I, like you're saying, I feel like that's how they usually tilt or turn towards, right? Like it's always that type of escape, and that's the goat. They're the scapegoat, I should say. They're going to oh, it's comedy, it's fine. But I don't know. It was a good movie. I recommend it when it comes out. Please see it. But one that you saw that I really want to see, and we're talking comedy here, is Spree. Tell me about Spree.
So Spree was a really interesting movie. It, first of all, ever so slightly did the same perspective of through camera phones, and different live streams. Now, it wasn't exactly like Host in that regard, but it was about an Uber driver. They did not use Uber. The app is called Spree. But it's an Uber driver that wants to be big on social media and is not, which I can't relate to at all. But it was really tough seeing that. So he wants to get more views, so he starts murdering people on his Uber drives,
as one does,
free drives. And I thought about it, like, while I give my opinions on Blue Velvet, should I chop off a stranger's head? And I think that's probably not the best idea, especially on film. But I look at this and I say to myself, this movie was great. It was fun. It had its message, and it did not need to say its message every single minute. And that's exactly what it did. It just decided to say, like social media is bad. Social media is bad. Social media. And it did it in such a way that just really started to gnaw at me. Other than that, this movie was a really just fun, comedy-like thriller that I really did enjoy. It features an amazing performance from Joe Keery, who was on Stranger Things as the beloved Steve. Everybody loves Steve. And
yeah.
Kidding. But he he kind of does something where he's like, okay, he's sort of like, he's putting it at a 10, which, can get a little bit tricky in this kind of role because he's just a little bit crazy. Actually, he's a lot crazy, but he shows a vulnerability there that just really does kind of work. And so I liked this film a lot. Some people might get turned off by the fact that the message is so clear. And by the way, that message is correct. Like, social media is a monster. People are monsters on social media. It's absolutely correct. But
hey, we are building our brands on social media. Please do not shit on it.
I'm doing the best I can to walk this one, because this is a tougher minefield than Boys State. Because I am trying to think about how to say this the best way. Because also rate, review, subscribe. But but. At the same time, I get it. I do get. I don't know. This was a very cool situation, and it had a dark turn to it besides just the killing people, which was a comedic dark turn. But this movie in general kind of grabbed me the right ways.
That's an interesting way to say that.
Right after I said it, I thought that was bad.
So David Arquette's also in this movie, is he not?
Oh, yeah, I totally forgot that David Arquette is in this. It's he's. The fact that I forgot that he's in it says a lot about his role.
Everything.
It's he's kind of being David Arquette, I guess is the best way to put it. I don't know if that's a good way or a bad way to put it, but he's doing his thing.
The only reason I remembered to bring that up is because we have a Scream story coming up, and that just reminded me of it. So tell us a little bit more about the other things that you watched this week.
So the last one I watched was Made in Italy.
Tell me about this, because I was very interested to see this, but I've seen mixed reviews.
It deserves the mixed reviews because it's a good movie. It's a charming movie. It's very cute. But it's about Liam Neeson, who is a disgruntled artist, and his son going to try to sell his house, the family home in Italy, because the son wants to buy the art gallery. And I really did like this, mainly because there's the real life story of Natasha Richardson, Liam Neeson's wife, dying in an accident, and this is his real life son, and so the emotion there is palpable, and it was beautiful to watch that. It's beautiful to watch the two of them. As a full-blown movie, I think this kind of dipped in certain areas. I think that the story in general just did not really work. If you are a fan of Liam Neeson, and you're a fan of him not trying to find a kidnapper for once, because this guy has other range, I really do love it. And here comes, for those of you, listening, my lovely and amazing girlfriend, Sam, is really going to task on me with, saying that this deserves an A+. And she won't hear anything else, which does help open up other arguments when you don't want to hear anything else. So that's really good, Sam. But honestly, like this is charming. This is great. Like it might be something you could enjoy. For me, I'm a big, and this alienates me from a lot of movies. I'm a big story guy, and this one, doesn't have the greatest of stories, but it does have a lot of heart to it. So also if you're a fan of Italy. Like we went to Italy a couple of years ago and back there for a little bit. So
I tend to agree with Sam. I trust Sam a little bit more here on that. So I'll give it an A+ even before I've seen it. So
she can come in here instead.
You watched a few other things this week. They're not exactly new releases, but do you just want to mention them real quick?
Very quickly, I've been on a Studio Ghibli kick, and just because of HBO Max. And so I watched Howl's Moving Castle. This came out in 2005 in the midst of the Iraq War, and Miyazaki was really Miyazaki, the animator, was really going into against the Iraq War. So he made this movie, and honestly, it's a bit of a mess trying to do that. I liked it until the very end, and then he's trying to bring everything together, and it turned into a little bit of a mess. But I still love the movie. I mean, it's a Miyazaki film, so the animation is absolutely one of the greatest things you'll ever see. There's nothing you can fault there. The other one I saw, which was very weird, and it was on a Criterion list, The Year of Living Dangerously. Now, this one popped out for me because Linda Hunt won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actress, but for playing a man. And this could be a disclosure, argument on the Netflix documentary, but honestly, this was just a very fascinating one. It's Mel Gibson plays an Australian reporter who is in China, falling in love with Sigourney Weaver, and Linda Hunt is playing Billy, who is fascinated by both of them, but then all of a sudden starts to hate the leader of China. And it was really a very interesting film about journalism and the struggles of journalism, which of course has been done many times, but was still a fresh take on that. So those two were some older ones, but also ones I saw.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting. I haven't really jumped into the Studio Ghibli pool, if you will. But, going back to, we've talked about the streaming services the past few weeks in different ways, especially with Netflix and Apple TV Plus that are really putting in the money to get the content. But I will say, I think HBO Max is actually a really great streaming platform. I don't know if you agree with that in terms of the content they have, but I've really enjoyed what they have on there.
I'm going to give the greatest white people problem in the entire world right now, and it is that pretty much I have an Amazon Fire Stick, and so pretty much all of my stuff is there. Criterion, HBO. Believe it or not, regular HBO is still on Amazon Fire Stick, even though HBO Go is gone. Then I have, I have my Netflix. I got a Hulu. I got them all right there. Now, in order to get HBO Max, I have to go to the next input, and I have to use my Google Chromecast on my phone. Is this the worst thing that's ever happened to me in my life? Kind of, but it's also I have a very particular set in mind. Sam's going to be commenting a paragraph in a minute about that, but I have a very particular set in mind, and that is, how I look at, how I watch things. Now, did I watch an HBO Max movie today? Of course I did. What?
No, you're totally right with that, and that's the ongoing battle with HBO and Amazon, and I think Roku as well, and probably others. But they just removed HBO Go from the Amazon store, and I think Google Play. I may be wrong on that. But long story short, the reason I'm relating to this is because we bought my father a new Kindle for his birthday a couple months ago, and he's freaking out that he's like, why are we subscribed to HBO and I can't get HBO Max? And I'm like, oh God. I'm like, well, I have it on my iPad. But hey, before we jump into the news, anything else that you're really looking forward to watching in the next week or so?
I would say like this week is a little bit like you have some stuff up there for what's going on and what's happening.
Yeah.
The only thing I can really think of like being interested in watching is Unhinged, and I don't know if I want to sacrifice a theater visit for that. So honestly, I really don't have much. Do you have anything going on or?
Not really. I'm using this week to catch up on things that I haven't seen or that I've wanted to watch that I haven't watched. But, one of them is The Outpost. I don't know if you've heard of that. I got it on Redbox here. I'm a big Redbox fan. So when it's in there, I grab it when I go get my morning coffee. But The Outpost is based on a book that was written by Jake Tapper from CNN, and it's gotten pretty good reviews. So I'm interested to see that. You know what I'm talking about?
I saw this. I don't know why the title just didn't stick with me. It's a great.
You watched it, or?
Yeah, it's a very good movie.
I heard it was pretty solid.
Yeah, like it was very well done. I will say, there's an abundance of characters. So in the final battle scene, you're kind of like, wait, who's that? Wait, what's going on there? So there's a little bit of that, but other than that, this movie's great. Outpost is great.
It's Game of Thrones where I need a whiteboard of like all the characters and like who's related to who, and so I'm looking forward to seeing that. And there's a couple other things I can't remember them off the top of my head, but some stuff that I thought like, if I get to it, I'll get to it. So we'll see. Orlando Bloom, yes, Sam. Orlando Bloom. He's actually doing some great like low key, not quite indie movies, but movies that just go straight to VOD. He's doing a good job with them, to be honest. But hey. So we talked about wanting to keep this to about 45 minutes to an hour. We are at a wonderful 37 minutes and haven't even gotten to the news, and we have a lot. So everyone that's listening, this is going to be a long one. Let's start with the news. We'll move through it as quickly as we can. The first story we have is that Lerman and Butterfield are set to star in The College Republican. So this is an interesting story because this script is 10 years old, I believe. 2010, it was on the Blacklist. So the Blacklist is, the best of the scripts that have not been bought and, produced into movies. So this film follows a young Karl Rove who is trying to win the National College Republican Club election. Logan Lerman, who was, I think, most famous for Perks of Being a Wallflower, will portray Karl Rove, the former campaign director of George W. Bush, or campaign manager, while Asa Butterfield from Ender's Game will portray Rove's campaign director, Lee Atwater. So it's a dirty politics story set in like high school time, whatever. Any interest in this?
I mean, yes. Like, I'm curious to see how those two do in, particular roles of that nature. I worry about this being, even if it's deservedly so, I worry about a Republican hit job. I think about Vice, where obviously, Dick Cheney's his first name. But I think about this as, but then they kind of went like, did Cheney cause forest fires? And I was like, okay, well, I think we're going a little bit too far. And I understand like the message they were trying to say there. So are they going to make this something where, it's goofy and they're evil, or are they going to like make it complex? Like, because I don't want them to be lionized either. But I'm just like, will they make this complex? Because Rove is obviously someone that really just like genuinely, regardless of what fence you're on, like screwed up politics for, decades now.
Ever.
And so I really think that this could be something where, you could portray this as these two characters. This is what they are. This is what they did. Or is it going to be a little bit too much? Now, I worry about hearing about a Blacklist script because, sometimes like whenever I hear of like a bad movie, they're like, oh, this was a Blacklist script that was going to be big and stuff like that. And maybe the script is great and it's something that everybody wanted. and then it just sometimes can be executed poorly.
Yeah.
Like, don't get me wrong, the Blacklist is an amazing organization, and I think that it should exist, and it really genuinely should. Franklin Leonard's amazing for making it, but like sometimes when you hear like, oh yeah, this Blacklist script got torn around, that's never a good sign sometimes.
Well, and you know what's interesting is part of the reason that it made its way onto the Blacklist is because it had some characters that real life people, but characters in the film that the filmmakers and I guess the general public felt like they wouldn't be identifiable in a film. One of those being Roger Stone, who of course is now more identifiable as part of the Trump campaign than he ever was. So I think they had talked about like changing his character over to like some random non-identifiable political operative or whatever, but now Roger Stone is back in the script. So I wonder if that had part of it or like something to do with it. But it's interesting. It gives me the feel of a Social Network, and I don't know why. We'll see. I'm not totally sold on Logan Lerman and Asa Butterfield in that. I think they're just like they've been a mediocre film so far. So I want to see more from them. Maybe this is what will propel them, but we'll see. The other big story, or another big story that I think is pretty interesting, is that Elizabeth Moss is really leaning into her horror, the horror aspects of her career after a really great turn in The Invisible Man. She's teaming with Blumhouse once again to play Mrs. March, which is based on a book that has yet to come out, which is a theme of a lot of the stories we've been talking about recently, just so you know. But the story follows a New York housewife who loses grip on reality when she begins to believe that her husband is based on, or has based the main character of his novel on her. That's really all we know about it. But are you interested to see Elizabeth Moss in another horror movie like this?
I mean, Elizabeth Moss. Oh boy, Elizabeth Moss rules. She is, she was just absolutely unbelievable in Invisible Man. She's great in The Handmaid's Tale. She's great in Shirley. What do those all have in common? She's playing the victim, and that's fine. And also in Invisible Man, it does become rather empowering for her. So but I kind of look at this and I say, is she going to do it again? And I'm like, oh, the husband is, oh crap! Like this is just one of those things where once again we're going to see her be abused, and this has been something that's been brought up in the past, and I think that it's just something to be warranted. And, if she gives us great performances like she has constantly done, then right on, keep at it. But I would like to see something outside of it. Granted, also, I like when, big actors and actresses work for Blumhouse, honestly, because Blumhouse is still like a pretty low budget sort of situation where, they throw some money there, but, then, they throw a lot of projects out there. That's the Blumhouse way. They throw a lot of projects out there, and then sometimes you get a Fantasy Island, and sometimes you get a Get Out. And so they cash in on the Get Out money, and then they throw more projects out there, which is really cool. And I kind of dig that style where it's just like, let's get it all out there. Let's let the audience decide. And it's instead of just being the cautionary, studio, it's just like, maybe not this. It may not make money. Let's do everything. So I really dig what they're doing there.
Well, and that's the story of horror films, right? They're all mostly low budget, unless you're like a Universal that's trying to build a dark universe and do something with like, the upcoming Frankenstein reboot of whatever. I don't know. But, Blumhouse does a good job of really focusing in on the story and building the entire movie around the story instead of trying to make the story into a larger spectacle than potentially it needs to be. And I think that's why I'm kind of excited for this, because I like Elizabeth Moss in these roles. But you're exactly right. Like, when is she going to break out of this mold of being the victim, the crazy person? It's time to take on something else. So the next story here is interesting. So embattled comedian Chris D'Elia is facing a number of sexual assault or sexual harassment allegations, and he's supposed to be in Zack Snyder's upcoming Army of the Dead film, which is heading to Netflix. But it's recently been announced that he will be replaced by actress comedian Tig Notaro in the film. So reshoots of the film are currently planned for this year at some point, whenever he's not working on the Snyder Cut of Justice League. But a large portion of it's going to have to be digitally altered in the film because the principal actors are not available for the reshoots. So Army of the Dead is that film that follows a group of mercenaries that are hired to go back into a Las Vegas casino years after a zombie plague, a zombie, apocalypse, so to speak, to recover a safe. So it's kind of interesting. I'm into that. I'm ready to see what that is. It worries me that it's going straight to Netflix, but I'm a Zack Snyder fan, so we'll see what happens. But do you think this is the right move with the recasting this late in the game?
Absolutely. For a couple of reasons. First of all, this is me working my hindsight, but I've never loved Chris D'Elia. I've always thought he was kind of an asshole, and I think that was his comedian persona. So, well done, I guess. But I've really just never liked him. I've always in any role he's playing, he's a dick, and now he genuinely is one. For those of you who don't know, he has literally solicited nude pics from underage girls, and people are like, "Well, let's hear everything." Well, there's screenshots. We're done.
Right.
And so I'm done with this guy. Get him out. We should also hate the people that that we love when they do this stuff. But it's easier with him. It's oh yeah, no, cool, out. And Tig Notaro is an interesting pick. Mainly because, they're both comedians, so that kind of works with that transference. But Tig, worked on a few different shows as executive producers with Louis C.K. And so, there wasn't a lot of creative collaboration. And in fact, she actually butted heads with Louis C.K. before his scandals came out. And so it's sort of it's interesting. I don't know if that was intentional. It very well might not have been, but that is an interesting casting choice. On the other end there, I am not we talk about our DC, DC allegiances. I'm not the biggest fan of Justice League, not the biggest fan of Batman versus Superman. But when it comes to Zack Snyder and zombies, Dawn of the Dead, and we'll get to that later on about the remakes. But that is a great, great remake.
He knows what he's doing with zombies.
I was going to say, this is going into a casino, like a zombie heist way after a zombie apocalypse, which, I really hate The Walking Dead, but I kind of dig The Walking Dead now of oh yeah, no, everything's gone. And I really love oh yeah, this is oh yeah, everything's done now. We're just kind of existing with zombies and we occasionally fight them. That sounds fun. That sounds great.
And I kind of imagine, I don't know why, but I imagine an Ocean's 11 type film in, this story. I don't know why that's what I go to right away. But, the really interesting thing about the Chris D'Elia story, or D'Elia, or however you say his last name, is that's the role specifically that he played when I'm speaking to the charges that he has. The role he played in You Season 2 on Netflix, which is one of my favorite shows, by the way. It's batshit crazy and insane, but it's really good. But yeah, it's spot on with the role he played. How weird is that?
There's an art in imitating life. We look at Kevin Spacey in American Beauty, and but it is just one of those things where someone said sometimes it's the people you most suspect, and that was D'Elia, because that was a really troubling thing, and he's just there's been a past with him before even these accusations came out, which is just
disgusting,
gross.
All right, let's move on to the next story. So the next one is really interesting to me, I think, because the writer of Matt Reeves' upcoming The Batman with Robert Pattinson just recently revealed that he has another film that's on the way this year that he worked on, which is a love story set during a pandemic. The interesting piece of this is that it was created, it was done before COVID-19 hit. So it has a bit of a sci-fi twist, though. So it's called Little Fish, and it stars Jack O'Connell, who I'm a big fan of. Jack O'Connell was in Unbroken. He was in a film called Starred Up, which did not receive a lot of press, but he plays a young man that heads to prison. His father is also in prison. It's a gritty movie, but I really loved it. And it also stars Olivia Cook from Thoroughbreds. So it's a story about people that are randomly losing their memories during a pandemic. So the pandemic causes them to lose their memories. I'm into this. I think this is a really fascinating story. I like those two actors together, mainly because, Jack O'Connell, I don't think has broken into mainstream a lot. Olivia Cook was phenomenal in Thoroughbreds. So I'm into it. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I love it. Like, I'm just thinking about like everything that's going on there. My one concern is that we're going to get a lot of COVID-19 and a lot of pandemic movies coming soon.
But don't you think the difference here is that this was done before the pandemic?
We might get away with it. And the other one was She Dies Tomorrow. And so that one got away with it too. And, the director has been saying in several interviews, like, well, we got lucky in the worst of ways, but is that also like that? If She Dies Tomorrow, I talked about that last episode, but very, very just foreboding of a pandemic as well. I look at this and I say to myself, this sounds great. And it sounds great in the sense that, we're looking at losing memories through a pandemic. I think, this really does sound like She Dies Tomorrow, and I'm really keeping my mouth shut further, or I'm doing it as much as I can because it's really tough. But I look at it. I love it. I mean, I love the crew behind it. There's not much more because it seems like they're keeping it under wraps. Yeah. But I think I'm just commenting separate from this that we're going to get so many pandemic pieces from TV and film, which is fine. We're writing about what we know. But that will be that. Like this is a World War II. This is something that we're going to be talking about, and then there's going to be a lot of creative pieces on. So.
It's true.
I just say buckle up for the next 4 or 5 years because we're going to get a lot of those.
4 or 5 years. You think about the Pearl Harbor remakes we've had, and we're going to be seeing this. And well, we won't be seeing it, but it's going to be in like 80 years from now. It's going to be insane. Well, so listen, let's move on to the next story because I gave you homework today before we got to this story, and I'm very excited to discuss it. But basically, the story that's out there right now is that Kevin Smith was talking recently about his ideas for a follow-up to his crazy-ass 2014 film Tusk. Tusk is a very odd film, and for those of you that haven't seen it, we're probably going to spoil it here, so for the next minute and a half, just, skip over that. But in Tusk, we have a guy that's left in the world that lives in the wilderness who essentially kidnaps or takes in a podcaster, ends up kidnapping him, and turns him into a walrus. I won't get into any more details because it would be really ridiculous to get into the details. But chatting about a sequel on his Twitch channel, Kevin Smith recently said that a sequel would likely see Justin Long's character, who was the individual that was turned into the walrus, escape the walrus body he was transformed into, now deranged enough to do it to others. Thoughts? Do we need this sequel?
Joe.
You warned me about this.
Joe, I appreciate what you've done for me, taking me in as a co-host, bringing me on as a podcast so I can have an outlet to express my movie opinions. But you did make me watch the film Tusk. And for that, I don't think I can ever forgive you. This was an awful film. This was an awful film in several ways. The story's entirely incomplete. The story doesn't really make any sense. I look at this and, there's no act structure to it at all. And pretty much it's just him, walrus, done. The movie didn't know if it was supposed to be like a shock comedy horror, just a comedy horror, just a horror. Just like, I don't know what it was trying to be. And like, I thought it was trying to be just like a so bad it's good, which by the way, being an intentional so bad it's good kind of movie is not a right thing. You cannot be an intentional so bad it's good movie. You can only be a bad movie and then eventually garner a following later, which now I like, as I Google stuff, I see stuff like, I didn't even read the articles, but it said in defense of Tusk. No, I don't even want to read that kind of article of in defense and Tusk because there's nothing you can defend about this movie. It is absolutely terrible. Sam was doing her job a few miles away. God help me, I'm already getting weird. A few feet away. She was doing her job a few feet away, and she was only listening to this thing, and she couldn't bear to hear the damn movie. So do I think there should be a sequel? Well, it might be interesting. I think, no, there shouldn't be a sequel to this movie. I think that the Justin Long escaping the walrus body. I think like I hated that character anyway. I was supposed to maybe feel bad for him. I'm not sure. I could not really imagine it. I will say this because I had sequel in my mind while I was watching this movie, and so I had to do everything I can to throw my head through a wall. And I would argue that maybe a prequel would be fun because I think the Michael Parks character is the more fascinating character. Was his performance terrible? Yes. But I just think there could be something fascinating with him. Maybe he was on that black and white lighthouse. Like, I don't know exactly how to put this.
The problem being that Michael Parks died a few years ago, so he could not do that.
Well, no, it would be another actor. Like, it would be, Pattinson.
Joaquin Phoenix.
Yeah, exactly. Why not? Well,
Listen, Tusk is a weird movie. It's a very weird movie. It's one that when I first saw it, I was like, what the hell is this? I've seen it a few other times. I don't know how I've seen it a few other times. I didn't intentionally try to watch it. But it's kooky enough that it just has something to it. I'm like, I love filmmakers that are like, I have this batshit crazy idea. Let's do it. Let's just put it on film. And that's exactly what this film is.
I will say Kevin Smith knows how to direct horror, which is very I've never thought Kevin Smith was more of a writer for me. Directing came along, it did a little bit different. I didn't really care about his directing, but his writing was always great. And he suddenly, when he does the horror, he switches. And now he's a great director of horror between Red State and Tusk, but the stories are not that great in those. And I'm just like, let's try to get.
You're misguided. Tusk is just phenomenal. Listen, let's transition a little bit, talk a little bit more about horror, but in the sense of DC Comics. So we found out in previews for the upcoming DC fandom, which we'll touch on a little bit later on in the show. But Aquaman director James Wan, who is, he made his name in horror, right? With The Conjuring and Saw. He put a little bit of the horror aspect into the original Aquaman that came out a few years ago with the trench scenes, right? So one of the other areas of the sea that we haven't seen. And it was a little, wouldn't say it was horror, but it did lean towards, the creature feature type thing. Now, in response to a question on the DC Comics Twitter account, which apparently there'll be more elaboration on this during DC Fandom this weekend, he said that he will again be turning towards a little bit more of horror. He said, I would say that there's a bit more in the next one, referencing Aquaman 2. And he went on to say that horror is a big part of who he is, and it just naturally comes out in his films. And I totally agree with that. And I think that that's a good thing for him, right? I feel like when filmmakers try to hide who they are or what they really are good at, that gives you a film that is not genuine, and you definitely can tell when they're trying to cover that up. So, when you're talking about the ocean, you're talking about Aquaman in the sea. There's a lot of horrors down there. So go for it. How do you feel about that?
Oh, I mean, the photo you have up there on your site, and basically the scene you just referenced is, I believe that's horror. And I didn't love a scene more than that one. That scene was amazing. They figured out the light was bad, and so they're swimming with the light down there, and it's just I was kind of blown away by how great that was.
It's cool scene.
I really, and first of all, I've been on the pod before and saying that Aquaman is truly a masterpiece. It really is that good, and I almost don't mean it unironically. It's one of the few ones that other people have not liked that I love this movie.
It's a fun movie.
It's just so much fun. It's got the perfect world building, and you figure it out very well. It's interesting to say that he's going to go more on a horror angle. I think it was funny when that scene happened. I was just like, oh yeah, James Wan.
There he is.
The moment it hit me, I was like, okay, good. He's going to go horror with this. And yeah, I mean, the ocean is terrifying. There was that movie that came out. I did not see it, but I saw the trailer, Underwater, where Kristen Stewart and T.J. Miller have to walk across the ocean floor. That scared me enough. They didn't need the monsters. To walk across the ocean floor, that freaks me out enough. That just thinking about what's down there. So obviously, let's get into some horror there. For the Aquaman, I'm 100% on board.
Well, hopefully the horror scenes won't feature Kristen Stewart trying to act down there because that would be truly horrific. But you know, Underwater was fine. I I joke there, but she was fine in that movie. Just was not what I wanted it to be. So let's shift gears a little bit more. We're like jumping all over the place with the different types of genres here. But the next one gets into the musical genre, and Universal Pictures is working on adapting a previous Tony Award winner Broadway show, Dear Evan Hansen, which starred Ben Platt. You may remember Ben Platt from from the Pitch Perfect films, as well as the show The Politician on Netflix, which I actually really enjoy. I think that's a fun fun show. But he is expected to reprise his role as Evan in the film. But now we've learned that the actress Amandla Stenberg from The Hate You Give will join Caitlin Denver, who was in Booksmart, in the film adaptation of Dear Evan Hansen. So this film and this story follows a socially anxious high schooler who makes up a tale that leads to him befriending the family of a classmate who died by suicide. It's a heavy show. The music's great. I'm a musical lover. I love the songs. I especially love when they tackle, deep issues. That's, if you didn't get that from me messaging you earlier about the movie I was watching, I love deep issue movies. But are you a musical guy? Are you a, film adaptation, a Broadway show guy?
I'm a recent musical guy. I think Hamilton drew me in, and so then like in the next year I was like, oh, Dear Evan Hansen, and then like the next year I keep on like getting involved in those. I think that sometimes the adaptations can range from good to poor. I think when a famous one is adapted, it's a little bit tougher. And I think, sometimes you don't get something great. I think that old Hollywood was better at adapting musicals, if that makes any sense. But I think that they now they can be a little bit overproduced in more ways than one. Sometimes they just they completely just do song for song exactly like the musical, and that unfortunately, just like we had a little argument about like books versus movies and stuff, and you cannot make the book exactly like the movie, so you cannot make the musical exactly like the movie as well. They are different forms. But
see, and this is the type of musical, as well as Hamilton, I would say, because the sets on Broadway are so simple. I'm excited to see what they do with the scenery and the set design of the movie adaptation. Obviously, I don't want them to branch off too much from the original music, and especially because the Dear Evan Hansen soundtrack, all of the music is written by Pasek and Paul, who wrote The Greatest Showman music. Which I love. The Greatest Showman. That's one of my top movies. So I'm interested in this. I like that they're bringing back Ben Platt as well. I think that would be really, it's really positive because they developed it around him. They developed a show around him, and he was the first one to play that role. So we'll see. We're getting into a time where we're going to have a few more musicals coming out in short turns. So we have Dear Evan Hansen that's in the works. There's reportedly a Hamilton movie in the works for down the road. A Wicked movie has been in the works for God knows how long. I think it was supposed to come out like last December. They gave us Cats instead. So that's great.
Much better. Yeah.
Much better. And then we also are getting In the Heights, which was supposed to come out this year, but it's coming out next summer. And we're also getting West Side Story in December this year. So a lot of musicals. I feel like, when you think about how studios are moving forward in this pandemic, it feels as though they're not relying on original scripts as much as they are adaptations of books, musicals, and other properties that are already existing and proven. So who knows? I mean, how many stories have we talked about where the books aren't coming out for like, a year or however long, and they've already bought the rights to them and they're developing the movie? It's crazy.
So you're okay with the Ben Platt? Because I feel a little bit weird about it, only because I love Ben Platt, but I just think that the musical versus the actual movie, you got to put someone else in there. Now, Ben Platt is right for the role, as you're saying, like it's literally was constructed around him.
Right.
How do you feel about literally like we're doing an adaptation? Are you okay with them separating that? I mean, I know Rent, you literally use the same cast, which I guess it was okay, but like, it just felt like I was just watching the musical again.
Yeah, I'm okay with it because I think, they built the story around him. I think that this is going to sound like a knock towards Ben Platt, but I think he plays socially anxious really well.
Oh, he does.
Right? Like, I mean, think about his character in Pitch Perfect movies. That's kind of what they were, or what he was. So I'm okay with it. I like that they're putting some other actresses around him, and I think they're probably going to try to flesh out the story a little bit more on screen. So we'll see. I mean, I don't know. I feel like that may have been something that they like promised him early on. They're like, "All right, we're going to go with you." And luckily for him, he has become a star in Hollywood. He's not like the top star, but he's doing well right now. So why not put him in it to drive the people that know him from the musical, plus the teeny boppers really that know him from Pitch Perfect and the Politician and stuff. So. But let's talk about a film that is not getting an adaptation, but a revival of sorts. So we've talked about Scream in the past, and there's Scream 5 coming down the road with potentially Neve Campbell reprising her role as Sidney Prescott. We also already know that Courtney Cox and David Arquette are reprising their roles. Now we have learned, according to Deadline, that the actress Melissa Barrera, speaking of In the Heights, she will be starring as the love interest in the Heights next summer. She's joining the franchise. She's joining Scream 5 in a key role. Key role. There's no other details around it, but that kind of leans towards she's probably going to be in this for the long haul if they keep making them. Do you know anything about this actress? I really don't know much about her, but she, I'm excited for In the Heights. So
I was going to say, I love In the Heights, and their casting is absolutely amazing. And so I think that, this bodes well for, someone that is this famous, like, the rumor mill, the reputation she's getting in Hollywood means that she's able to get this other role from In the Heights before In the Heights even comes out. I mean, a central role in Scream. I remember Drew Barrymore's essential role in Scream. Big starring role. And she was just popcorn popper number one. So in this case, I do wonder, what does this mean? I think it's great that there's going to be some diversity in this movie. I would love to see that go a little bit further. And I think that's going to be the modern edge. So, once again, I can't say much about the Scream movies
because you haven't watched them.
Because I have not. I am going backwards in horror. I have Exorcist on my queue for HBO Max, so I'm ready to get going on that one. I've obviously seen the key moments, but
Well, we'll talk about that in a little bit. But the next story here is that we have learned that in the upcoming Matrix 4, which has been delayed, I think, twice now and is coming out in like 2022 or something, it's in a battle with the Avatar films to see which one is going to come out first. But we've learned that Lawrence Fishburne, who played Morpheus in the original trilogy, will not be returning. So there's been a lot of conversation about whether or not he would be. He recently told New York Magazine that he was not asked back. So that's kind of interesting, right? There's been rumors that Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, who you may remember from Aquaman or Watchmen, he played Black Manta in Aquaman. There's rumors that he's portraying a young Morpheus, which kind of gets me towards thinking that this might be like some sort of time travel type thing again, which I feel like everyone is doing. But Carrie Moss and Keanu Reeves are back for this. Does this surprise you at all?
It does a little bit. I don't exactly know what Lawrence Fishburne's up to where he doesn't want to do this, or maybe they just have not reached an agreement there. Maybe
they haven't asked him, apparently.
Yeah. Maybe it's just that Lawrence Fishburne's not interested. Maybe the movie's not interested in him. Maybe they are going for the Yahya angle, and I kind of hope they do, because I want him to be in everything ever. He's spectacular. I look at, you sort of mentioned a time travel thing. I don't even know if you could do time travel with this, because it's just, simulated worlds. So, you could have a simulated world with the young Morpheus. You could have you could do whatever you want.
Hey, change the simulation until 1833.
It is just my mom always says, with time travel, you can do anything. And that essentially is true. But I think with this, you can even do more, because it's just, they keep on making new worlds and making new worlds. So, let's see what the hell this one's going to be all about. And so you could have something young, you could have it different, you could have Keanu meeting young Keanu from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Like, let's do the fight there. You could go anywhere with this. I mean, in terms of my excitement towards it, something 10 years later, 10 to 15 years later, a movie coming out from like trying to redraw a franchise that doesn't really go that well unless you're Mad Max. And so I wonder, I don't have a lot of optimism, but I'd love to see something great, something new. I know that, I love those two stars, so, keep them in there, but something different there.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned, to be quite honest, because as you're kind of alluding to, when you're doing a film that's this far in the future compared to when the original trilogy came out, not including some of the most popular characters, I think is going to hurt them in the marketing, number one, but in the excitement for the film, number two. And I think that Morpheus was actually one of the more popular characters in that film. You think about what's quoted all the time. You're talking about the red pill or the blue pill. He really is the one that introduced us to the Matrix in the original film, the first film that came out in, I think, 99 or 97, somewhere around there. So it kind of bothers me that they didn't even reach out to him. Now, is this a play, right? Like, will we see him in the film anyway? Who knows? That's not, something that I'm not considering. I totally believe that there is a possibility we may see him in this. I do like that they're giving Yahya something more to do in this film than just being like a random ass character that they throw in for a fourth edition of The Matrix. I don't know. We'll see. I have no idea where they're going with this film and no idea where they should go, nor where they could go. Just like I didn't think we needed a Space Jam 2, but we did just get the pictures, or I guess like a GIF type thing of LeBron in the new Toon Squad outfit. What are your thoughts on that? Let's run through this one quickly because I think we don't have much to say here.
I think it's going to be So Space Jam is an amazing movie that I love to bring up and pop up and watch for nostalgia's sake. As I watch it now, it's not a good movie. There's no second act. It's a first act and the third act. It's the weirdest friggin' thing, and the product placement is very jarring. Do I watch it? I will watch it all the time. I love that movie, but it is not a good movie. And so they're bringing this back, and they're bringing back LeBron. And LeBron, you do a lot for the community. You do a great amount. You then writhe on the floor when you slightly tap your hand, and then all of a sudden you're fine. I wonder
Turns
how
into a soccer player.
So he just has that big head that he needs attention. And I'm seeing this gif of him walking close and just like looking at him. And I'm just like, and maybe Jordan was also somebody that was arrogant and needed attention. And maybe I don't really need to deal with that. And that's why he made this bombastic movie that would kind of sucked. And now he's going to make this bombastic movie that also kind of sucks. And I really think it's cool that the technology has kept up. But in the same regard, I don't think LeBron James has that kind of acting ability. I think he was kind of funny in Trainwreck because he told a couple of jokes, but in actuality, I don't really think he's that, I don't know. I don't like LeBron. Space Jam's an amazing movie back in the day. It's obviously not that great now. I don't know what they'll do to improve upon it. I'm probably going to hate watch this. And there's a lot of complicated feelings I'm feeling about this one. As you can see, I'm railing against this one big, but yeah, no. The uniforms don't look good either. They're covering the whole thing. They're trying to do a new style there. I don't know.
So two things. One is that, we had Michael Jordan, who did not just want to be known as a basketball player, but tried golf, tried baseball, and then tried acting. And that's what we got in Space Jam. Space Jam 2, I see, is two things. Number one, they've been talking about making the movie for, over a decade. They've been talking about making a Space Jam 2. But number two, it's also a way to reintroduce the Looney Tunes to a younger population, right? Like the youngsters of today. So I think HBO Max might really benefit from this, especially specifically HBO Max, because I don't know that they do like a full Looney Tunes movie or anything like that, but outside of Space Jam. So I mean, whatever. We're gonna get what it is. It's gonna be okay. It's never gonna live up to what the first one was, because while the first one wasn't the best movie, it is kind of iconic in its own way. Like we always, like you're saying, when it comes on, I watch it. because it has some funny lines and just some funny instances in it. So I don't know. We'll see. I don't know that we need it. I don't know. Like, this is just LeBron trying to cement his legacy, and Warner Brothers being like, "Hey, we have someone to fill those shoes." We think. So let's get to our top story because it kind of relates to this in a little bit, in a way. But what we're talking about are the two remake stories and pieces of news around remakes that we got today. One being a remake of 1987's John Hughes classic Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, which will star apparently Will Smith and Kevin Hart. The original film had Steve Martin and John Candy in it. It's actually a lot of fun. It's two individuals that miss their flights trying to get back for Thanksgiving. They end up traveling together to try to get back, and there's a bunch of hijinks that ensue. The other film that we learned about that's getting potentially getting a remake is The Exorcist. And you mentioned that a little bit earlier, but there are two films, Plane, Trains, and Automobiles being a comedy that is kind of iconic in a lot of ways and really popular even to this day, mainly because of the two actors, I would say. That's getting a remake. But The Exorcist, do we really need remakes of that? So how do you feel about remakes in general? Where are we with this? Has Hollywood lost its way?
Okay. I've been brewing for 24 hours, and I'm going to be nice. I'm going to be mean at times, but I'm going to be nice.
Oh boy.
I'm going to mainly talk about the Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, mainly because while I know The Exorcist is a classic and I've seen a lot of the key scenes, I've never seen the movie total. But I'm going to talk about Planes, Trains, and Automobiles because this is a beautiful and noble classic, one of my favorite films, and I have about 2 million, but this is one of my favorite films. It's spectacular in every way. But let me go, first of all, I'm going to preface this by saying the Planes, Trains, and Automobiles remake, the one I'm seeing right there, is probably going to suck. Probably going to suck. 90% chance of sucking. But I want to sort of go against some of the arguments. One argument, you're ruining a classic. No, they're not. Planes, Trains, and Automobiles will always be on DVD. You can always pop it in, and it's going to be fine. That movie's not ruined unless you scratch that DVD, okay? like there will then be a Planes, Trains, and Automobiles remake, and it will probably be bad, like I was saying. But that does not ruin the classic, all right? I think about, one of the other things that I hear is, well, let me just go with what I'm seeing here is, first of all, another great thing about this is they are seeing this movie. They are putting this movie, a movie that, is a classic, is something that's great, and putting a diverse spin to it. I think that could be a good movie if they can tell the story slightly different. They're putting it in a diversity spin, and they're putting it in a modern spin. Like where, hey, Steve Martin didn't have a cell phone to call his family. So maybe you can bring those twists in. Now, the phone's just probably going to be dead the whole time, and they're just going to, walk out of that plot hole easily. Okay? My biggest issue here is that we have here Will Smith, Kevin Hart, both charismatic, both funny. I won't compare them to Steve Martin and John Candy, but I will say they are not Steve Martin and John Candy types, meaning that I can't picture either of them being an uptight guy that sort of holds in his emotions and then blows at the last second. I can't picture either of them being an annoying yet charismatic, fun person. Now, I know it's probably going to be looking at it Will Smith as the Steve Martin character and Kevin Hart, who's a little bit more explosive as the John Candy character. I think they both can be funny. I think there could be some clever things. If they try to put themselves in those footholds, they will lose, and this will be bad. I then go after remakes in general, as you said. I think remakes... I'm doing this before screaming. I think remakes can be a good thing. I do. And there are a lot of good remakes out there. But there's some rules with remakes. You got to tell the story that you're given slightly different. All right? You can't do a shot-for-shot remake. I'm looking at you, Gus Van Sant and Psycho.
And Disney.
What?
And Disney in general.
And most of these live action Disney exactly. You know, I didn't even think of those. Like when you wanted to ask worst remake, there we go. Those are all those, because you have to bring something new and fresh take. Ocean's 11. You know, the first one is just, you know, a bunch of drunk Rat Pack members singing together, and then occasionally they pick up a bag of money and they, you know, end up setting it on fire. Spoiler alert. The new Ocean's 11 is a little bit better, with like them having like the con job going and all the setups going on there. I'm trying to think of the other remake, True Grit. True Grit was just John Candy, God help me, John Wayne mumbling a whole bunch. But the actual True Grit from the Coens, they decided to make it a little bit better with the Westerns and stuff like that. You have to, first of all, look at the first movie and say, the first movie wasn't that good. The first movie had some issues. The first movie went a lot of like, you know, raw here or there. Let me tell a different story. Let me tell it possibly in a different style. Let me tell it a different way. There have been 4 remakes of A Star is Born. The 4th remake of A Star is Born is one of the best movies of that year. It is a very, very good movie.
I was concerned where you were going with that.
Oh yeah, no, I'm being very good here. Like I'm trying, because I was screaming internally for, you know, the past 24 hours when hearing about this news, which I think it will be fine. But I'm going to keep okay. So A Star is Born, modern retelling, same aspects of the story there, like, you know, same message there, but modernized and, you know, stylistically different. I think that's one of the most important things there.
Oh, is that it? Are we done?
I think I had more, but I just blacked out a little. I definitely had a few other things, like other people that just rail against things with remakes, where, oh, this was the other one that I had. And this was something you sort of said, where, and this is the most important thing I had, and this is really important, where people say Hollywood has no original ideas. And no, that's not true. Hollywood has original ideas. There are original movies coming out. I watched a movie about a fucking cow. So if we think about it, there are different movies that are coming out that have different ideas. Are there also movies that are recycled or sequels? Yes. Now here's the problem. Look at the box office. The recycled movies and the sequel movies make the most money. And is movie making a business? Unfortunately, yes. But hey, what won the Oscar? Parasite. What won the Oscar the year before? Green Book. Fuck. Okay, so if we think about it, like we look at it and we say, wait a minute, there are good movies that come out. Then before that, Shape of Water. Then before that, Moonlight. Honestly, there are still movies coming out that are good. You know, you could say that movies stories get recycled. Not that much. I mean, some people argue there's only 2 stories. The crucifixion, or not, the resurrection and the Odyssey, which is the most fascinating thing I ever heard. I don't think that's exactly true. Other people say there are 7 stories. I don't have those to list right now. But there are several remakes, and there are sometimes retellings, and sometimes they're like, that movie was an original movie, that movie was a remake. You sometimes don't even know. And that's okay to retell that story. Once again, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is probably going to suck. This Exorcist remake is going to be most likely fairly abysmal. Disney live-action remakes need to stop. I can't wait to see Mulan. Joe, get in there, because I think I'm just talking in circles now, just out of like pure, you know, just hatred of what's going on. But you go.
Well, look, there's a lot of remakes that have come out that have really, I think, shit the bed. So you talk about like The Mummy, right? The remake of the Brendan Fraser film that I actually think is a blast. I love the original Mummy. I even like Mummy Returns. And you had Tom Cruise doing, you know, his version of it, and it just did not work. We also had remakes of Psycho, remakes of Total Recall. We had remakes of The Haunting. We had a remake of Fame. We had a remake of, oh God, I'm trying to think of all the other ones that have come out. And they just did not work. So, you know, part of me feels like when there's a money grab to be had, when there's like, oh, let's just greenlight this. We don't care about the creative process. We just want to adapt it into today. That studios are very quick to do that. The other piece, and this is a little bit of a different focus on it, but it really bothers me when they just recast. You know, you mentioned the diversity play in terms of Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. So find a new property to tell that story. It bothers me when you get like a plane, trains, and automobiles where they're like, oh, we had 2 white men before. Well, now we're going to have a black guy and a white guy. And they're, it's all about diversity. Great. Okay, whatever. It's the same thing they did with Ghostbusters in 2016, where they just threw women into the Ghostbusters story. Give these people their own stories, give them original stories, write original stories for them. And that's kind of what bothers me, because I get the argument that maybe you want to ride the previous success of the name of Ghostbusters, or the previous success of a story like whatever it may be. Someone just said Footloose in the comments, and I totally agree with that. I like the new Footloose. I like them both. But I get riding that. But what you've seen is that when you ride those previous, the previous titles, the previous versions of the films, they're not successful. They have not been. They will not be. You're getting that. You had Dirty Dancing Havana Nights in 2004, I think, which was horrendous. And now you're getting another Dirty Dancing with, what's her name that played, Jennifer Grey, I think it is, that played Baby. She's coming back for Dirty Dancing too. You're just trying to ride the same old train. So all that to say, I will see the remakes. I will not enjoy them. The only remake that I really fully enjoy, and I know that this is not normal for a lot of people do not agree with this, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake that came out back when I think I was in high school at that point, quite honestly, so it had to be between 2000 and 2004. I really liked that one. I thought it was pretty good, and I tend to like a lot of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre ones because that just creeps me out. But you're always gonna, horror is, I think, the area that tries to remake itself as much as they can, as many times as possible. We've also seen it with Godzilla. We've seen it with Fantastic Four had the remake. We've seen 3 different versions of Spider-Man. So they're all to varying degrees. But I think if there wasn't an appetite for those properties in general, we wouldn't be seeing the remakes. I'm not saying they're all going to be, money makers or whatever, but we can shit on them as much as we want, but you and I will probably both watch them all.
So. Yeah, I mean, like, that's the one thing. I think it's a money talk sort of situation, and we look at what was the last original film to be on the box office top 10, and there's not a lot. Now, I think you look at the other thing is can they make a profit, and that's where how much did they make? How much did you pay for them? And, how much will they make back? And can you get a profit from them? I mean, let's look at Get Out. That was original as hell. And then some people could argue, you hear an interview from Quentin Tarantino and he just says oh, Pulp Fiction wasn't an original film. Pulp Fiction was I took it from this and this and this and this movie and that movie and that movie. So technically Quentin Tarantino made a remake of Pulp Fiction. Now that's him referencing 18 obscure stories from different movies that no one has ever seen. But
here is listen, I'm going to put this on the record right now. Quentin Tarantino is the most overrated director and does not deserve half the shit that gets said about him in accolades, because his movies are lengthy, have no depth, and just have good one-liners that people remember for decades on end. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was not a good movie. That is my opinion, but
I don't go this far with Tarantino, but I don't go that far the other way either. I think that people tend to worship at the altar, and I think it's a little bit scary to worship at the altar of anyone, and we'll just reference Boys State right there, and but I just worship at the altar of anyone. And I think Hateful Eight's his greatest film. I'm like, no, it's not. Now, has that guy made some movies that stand the test of time? Yes. Now, I'm going to stand here and say Jackie Brown's one of his best, and people will just want to fight me there. Jackie Brown is amazing, but nobody's seen it and nobody wants to. I think there's just like Spielberg. We're going off on a tangent, but I'm liking it.
No, I'm into it.
Like Spielberg and Tarantino, where the smaller stuff they've done is the better stuff. And that's something that's really interesting with, the both of them.
But what else I'd say is there's other directors out there that I think deserve more accolades than they get. And, he, just because he has the number of movies he does and they're all the crazy movies and really weird topics or whatever, he gets the accolades. But I think about like Aaron Sorkin. He's better known as a writer, but even when he directs, I think his movies are so good. I think they're more, there's more depth to them. I think there's more. It challenges your thinking a little bit more. I think Christopher Nolan's great. He hasn't been around as long as Tarantino has, but I don't know. I guess I'm just like starting to rail against the old guard, and I'm like, bring these younger directors in, bring these directors that have always done like indies up to the big leagues, except for Josh Trank because that didn't work. But I don't know. Get away from Tarantino.
No, I think that we've become sort of entranced in these event directors, and where it's just an event to see their movie, and I think that's. A part of me thinks that's positive because these event directors are, Tarantino, Nolan. There's a bunch of other ones I can't think of now, but Tarantino and Nolan are the big ones where we're gonna go see his movie. Well, Tenet's a big deal. No one else would give a shit, but it's a Nolan movie, so we want to go see it. And
you got Tarantino, you got Nolan, you've got Spielberg, you've got Cameron.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think who else is in that mix right now. I don't know if there's really anyone else.
But they have the original ideas. And so just to bring it back to this remake and sequel thing, well, that's a bad example because Spielberg's remaking freaking West Side Story coming in December. But, and you know what, God, I'm going all over the place, but here we go. With Spielberg remaking West Side Story, I kind of dig that. Is West Side Story this amazing classic that's pretty much untouchable and absolutely well done? Yes. It's perfect. But a part of me said, I kind of want to see what something with a little bit more modern technology can do.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's going to be good, but that's one that has me very curious.
Well, and that's also In the Heights, right? Do we need an In the Heights movie that is different than the stage play, but the way that they're adapting it to be more, socially prevalent with DACA and stuff? I'm all about that. Yeah. I think that's a brilliant move, and it has Lin-Manuel Miranda behind it, and I'm all in on that. I can't wait. So I guess that gets back to the original point of taking something from the past and adapting it for the current times, which is a better way to remake things than just doing here's the same old story, but again, now we have a black guy and a white guy. Oh, look how racy we are. Ugh.
I thought about with that, but then it's just going to become apparent if it's Will Smith and Kevin Hart in a movie that's just they can't get home. I honestly thought about the movie Due Date with Zach Galifianakis and Robert Downey Jr. And I was just like, oh, this feels like Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. They're both trying to get home. One of them is obnoxious. One of them is tied up. And I just said to myself, this is Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Robert Downey Jr. and Zach Galifianakis have not thought about that movie since they made that movie, just so you know. That's the first mention of it in, God knows how long.
Todd Phillips hasn't thought about that movie either. I mean,
Well, that's all the big news that we have. So we did a really good job of sticking to our 45 minutes to 1 hour timeline. We're at an hour and 32 minutes.
I believe we could do it, but no.
Let's talk about some of the big releases. Let's talk about some of the releases that are coming out this week. So we have Unhinged, which is the Russell Crowe thriller, if you will, that's coming out in theaters. We have Inception, the 10th anniversary edition of it, which is coming out to theaters. I believe it will have a lengthier preview of Tenet in front of it in IMAX, if I'm not mistaken. The one and only Ivan will be on Disney Plus. I'm actually kind of excited for that movie. I know it's cheesy probably, but it's getting reviews that are saying it's fun. It's it is what it is. It's a family movie, and God, let's just keep it simple right now. Stage Mother is going to video on demand. Words on the Bathroom Walls, which is the film that I referenced earlier, will be in theaters, and Chemical Hearts is going to Prime Video. The ones that I glossed over, I don't know as much about as I would like to, but I will be checking them out. Sean, where can people find you?
People can find me on Math Teacher Movies, where I can rail against the system of remakes, unless they're good remakes. And Math Teacher Movies on Instagram. I do plenty of reviews, hot takes on the Oscars, and Monologue Mondays and Final Shot Fridays.
When will your Tusk review be going up?
So when I do older movies, they get put on a giant list of the older movies. And so Tusk won't be on for a couple of weeks. But by then I'll probably be a walrus with all the candy I've eaten.
You got to link it. It's all about the promotion, right? We're talking about it right now on YouTube. Tomorrow will be out on the podcast. So you got to put it up because people are going to be expecting it.
I'm about 4 beers deep. If you want me to do a review on Tusk right now, let's do a review on Tusk right now. Let's get a 2-hour podcast going. I'm ready to go. But
I got to go. I'm busy. I got a film festival to organize. No. So just speaking about what's coming up soon, tomorrow night will be the Guys Movie Quizzo Harry Potter Movies Edition at 7:30 p.m. on YouTube. Finally, it was supposed to be 2 weeks ago. It'll be tomorrow night. It'll be a lot of fun. Something that's coming up this weekend. We didn't get into this because I think we'll probably talk a lot about it next week, depending on what news is coming out. But DC's Fandom is this Saturday. It's a 24-hour event where they're covering like everything from the Batman to Wonder Woman 84 to the Snyder Cut to what's coming on HBO Max. I'm excited for it. There are some sessions that have no titles as of right now. They're like untitled DC film, untitled project, and I'm nerding out about them. There's a rumor that they will be announcing a Man of Steel 2 with Henry Cavill, and I will freak out because I'm so excited for that, and I've been wanting it for years. But they're also expected to announce a Green Lantern HBO Max show. And then there's also been a rumor that Ben Affleck will be returning for a TV show, an HBO Max show around an older Batman. So a lot of people wanted to see Ben Affleck as Batman in future films because of everything that's going on and everything that has happened. I'm not sure that will happen, but this might be the next best thing. Elliot from Movie Files and I will be covering DC Fandom at 12 p.m. Eastern on Saturday. We'll be doing a previews and predictions show on YouTube. And then at 9 p.m., we'll be doing a wrap-up of all the news. We'll also be going live throughout the day on Instagram Live, just chatting about the things that are nerding us out right there. So that should be fun. And then once again, the first ever Guy at the Movies Virtual Film Festival is August 28th through the 30th. Go to guyatthemovies.com to register, to get all the latest, to get some fresh offers. That big t-shirt order I placed is coming tomorrow, so you should be getting your t-shirt soon, Sean.
Yes, very psyched.
And then something else. I ordered something else, which will make us a little bit more official. That will be sent out to all of you partners. So that should be fun. As always, if you want to listen to this podcast, you can listen anywhere that you find your podcast. If that's Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, the other ones that I'm not as familiar with, they're there. And as always, please wear your damn mask. Sean, have a great week, and we shall chat next Tuesday.
Have a good one, Joe.
Later.